Good evening. Namaskar, everyone. Namaskar. Swami Atmagyanji is out of town, so I have the privilege of studying the gospel with you this evening. Let me start with the opening prayer. Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibiriditam Kalmashapaham Sravanamangalam Srimadatam Bhuvi Grananti Te Bhurida Jana. Om. Your words are like nectar, bringing life to scorched souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. I want to study with you chapter 8 in the English Gospel. It's page 181. Chapter 8, the Master's birthday celebration at Dakshineshwar, Sunday, February 18, 1883. In the Bengali edition, it is page 138. বেলঘরে গ্রামে গোবিন্দ মুখোপাধ্যায়ের বাটিতে শ্রী রামকৃষ্ণ নরেন্দ্র প্রভৃতি ভক্ত সঙ্গে কীর্তনানন্দে প্রথম পরিচ্ছেদ. What's Bengali book? Nandagare. Sri Ramakrishna arrived at Govinda Mukherjee's house at Belgaria near Kolkata. Besides Narendra, Ram, and other devotees, some of Govinda's neighbors were present. The master first sang and danced with the devotees. After the kirtan, they sat down. Many saluted the master. Now and then he would say, bow before God. Bow before God. It is God alone, he said, who has become all this. But in certain places, for instance, in a holy man, there is a greater manifestation than in others. You may say there are wicked men also. That is true. Even as there are tigers and lions. But one need not hug the tiger god. One should keep away from him and salute him from a distance. Take water, for instance. Some water may be drunk, some may be used for worship, some for bathing, and some only for washing dishes. This idea that God alone has become all this. Many times in the gospel, Sri Ramakrishna makes such a statement. Sometimes he said the Divine Mother herself has become all this. That is the commonly held view in Vedanta, that this whole physical universe, cosmos, which you are experiencing with the mind, through the sense organs, it is none other than the ultimate reality described as Brahman in the Upanishads. The Upanishads contain the Mahavakyas, important statements. One of them is, all this whole universe is Brahman itself. I am Brahman, every individual is Brahman, and you are that, everything. I am Atma Brahma, this individual is Brahman. Like that. That area has been the basic position in the in Vedanta, in the Upanishads. This has great implications in our daily life. We may say, oh, that may be so, but what does it mean to me? I still have to go to work every day and pay my bills and deal with the problems of life. So this idea has great implications. In every moment of our life, this has to be reflected. That means whatever we are dealing with whomever we are dealing with, in whatever situation we are placed, we are with the divine. It is within us and within everyone else in the same way. But in some beings, as he is going to explain later, the manifestation is greater. That manifestation means the visibility. God's presence is clearly visible in some people and quite hidden under layers of ignorance in other people. Not only people, in all beings, animals, plants, and even in inanimate objects also. Moving, unmoving, animate, inanimate objects. It's all He who has become the whole universe. This is what Thakur is saying here. It is God alone, he said, who has become all this. So this affects all aspects of our life, especially our relationship with other beings, other human beings, with inanimate objects we deal with animals and plants, with situations. We have to remember this. It's God alone with whom we are dealing. When dealing with oneself also, is present within me. That awareness should be kept in mind when you do all our activities. This is clearly explained in detail in the Gita, in many places in the Bhagavad Gita. Whatever action we do should be done as offering to the divine, as worship of the divine. With whomever you are dealing, we should remember you are dealing with the Lord Himself. It may be difficult to put into practice in some cases because His presence is not clearly visible in all in the same way. In holy people, in Mahatmas, His presence is clearly manifest. If we approach a holy person, we naturally feel peaceful. No need to give a lecture or nothing need be done, nothing need be said. But the very presence of that person, in the ambience of such a person, holy person, we naturally feel peaceful. That such people radiate spirituality. The presence of God in them is very clearly visible. Others can also feel. That's why Sri Ramakrishna again and again emphasizes the importance of seeking holy company. But in others, it is not so well visible. It's concealed. His presence is unconditional. It does not depend upon whether a person is pure or impure, educated or uneducated, whether a person believes in the existence of God or not. Does not matter. His presence is unconditional. He alone has become all this. That he has explained many times in the Gospel. We'll read about it in the Gita also. So in the Gita, in many places, there are clear instructions. How should we deal with people of different sorts? In your daily life, you come across all kinds of people, especially in workplace and also in families. Not all of them are of the same nature. So we have to practice same-sightedness, samadarshitvam. The term samadarshitvam comes in the Gita. In the famous song, Vaishnava Janato Tenekahiya, which was the favorite song of Gandhiji, Samadarshine Namati Haro, it says. Narsimhata, the famous poet saint of Gujarat, composed that song. There he says, "O Lord, your name is Samadarshi. God is same-sighted. So we have to put it into practice in to the extent possible. There are practical constraints. We have to be careful, especially when you are dealing with the people who don't have the same views as we have, whose interests are quite different. May not be even nice people. When we deal with them, when we sometimes you have to deal with such people, then to keep this idea in mind, but we have to be careful. Sri Ramakrishna explained this with the help of a parable familiar to all of you, the parable of the wild elephant in the forest hermitage. This young student was gathering firewood, and the wild elephant came. The elephant's Mahot, the trainer, he could not control the elephant, and he was asking everybody to get out of the way. All the other boys of the hermitage were doing work in the forest, gathering water, firewood, etc. They ran away to safety, but this one little boy stood there, right in the path of the oncoming wild elephant, trying to pray to God in the wild elephant. The elephant does not know anything about God. So he saw this boy in its path and took him in its trunk and threw him away and went away. So we have to be careful. When you see a wild elephant, you recognize God in the wild elephant, but we have to stay away. It is dangerous to stand in front of the wild elephant. God is present in it, no doubt. But the elephant has no awareness of God or anything. It's an elephant. So we have to be careful. From a distance, we have to show our respect, recognize God, but not get too close to them. This is not safe. So in applying this principle, we have to apply common sense. So that will come later in this chapter. It is God alone, he has said, who has become all this. But in certain places, for instance, in a holy man, there is a greater manifestation than in others. You may say there are wicked men also. That is true, even as there are tigers and lions. But one need not hug the tiger god. One should keep away from him and salute him from a distance. Take water, for instance. Some water may be drunk, some may be used for worship, some for bathing, and some only for washing dishes. Qualities are different. Substance is the same, but the qualities are widely different from one thing to another. Even among human beings, you can see people of various degrees of manifestation of God. Some very wicked people with whom we should not even approach, and very nice, great Mahatmas with whom their company we should seek, and lot of in between people like us. So that is the idea. From a distance, you have to bow down to the presence of God in all and everything. Then a neighbor asks a question. Revered sir, what are the doctrines of Vedanta? Good question. Sri Ramakrishna replies, the master, the Vedantist says, I am he. Brahman is real and the world illusory. Even the I is illusory. Only the Supreme Brahman exists. He's stating, Sri Ramakrishna is stating the conclusion of Vedanta as given in the Upanishads. He says, the Vedantist says, I am he, aham brahmasmi. That is my famous statement in the Upanishads, aham brahmasmi, I am he. Brahman is real, Brahma satyam, and the world illusory, jagat mithya. Even the I is illusory. What we call I, the individual personality, jiva, individual person, that is also illusory. Thus, we studied in the Gita that all beings, human beings and all other beings, are made up of two components, as it appears from our perspective. From the human perspective, from where we are now, it appears there are two parts in every one of us. The perishable, temporary, changing physical, material part visible to the senses, and behind that, hidden from you, is the imperishable divine presence. The Lord says, I myself have become the Jiva by collecting all the components of Prakriti in the form of mind, body, sense organs, and I am in present in all. In the 15th chapter, we see Mamaiva Amsho Jivaloke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. Mamaiva Amsha, my part alone, the Lord Himself has become all the individuals. But He has gathered components of nature, Prakriti, perishable thing, in the form of sense organs, body, mind, and other things. It's He who's present in all and everything. The Vedanta says, I am He. Brahman is real and the world illusory. World illusory means, Jagan Mithya means, it is not absent. You are feeling the presence of the world. We are experiencing the world every moment of our waking state. That is unquestionable. We cannot say it is not there. I cannot say the table is not there, I am not there. We are experiencing its presence. But what is meant by unreal is it has a beginning, it has an end, and in between the beginning and the end, it changes every moment. Earlier we have seen everything undergoes six kinds of changes from birth to death. Shadvikaras. That is why it is unreal. It's not dependable. Today it is not there, tomorrow it is not there. It's called Ashwatha. This world is compared to a tree in the 15th chapter of the Gita. The tree is Ashwatha tree. Ashwatha, the word Ashwatha means not tomorrow, not there tomorrow. Shwa means tomorrow. Stata means present. A means not. Negative prefix. Something that is not there tomorrow, at least not in the same shape as it is today. So that is the nature of the world. Everything in this world comes and goes and not permanent. That is why it is called unreal. It is there right now. In the waking state, we experience it. There is no doubt about that one. But the ultimate reality, which we call Brahman in the Upanishads, the divine presence within us, that has no beginning, it has no end, and it does not change. It is attributeless, pure consciousness. It is there within every one of us, unconditionally. That is the real substance. The other is a container. The body, mind, sense organ, they're all like a container, but the content is the main thing. The divine presence is the content. Well, all these body, mind, sense organs, they undergo change every moment. The divine remains unchanged. When all these things end their existence, it does not go out of existence. It stays. That was nicely explained. See, what is explained in the Upanishads very succinctly in the form of Mahavakyas is explained nicely in simple language in the Bhagavad Gita and other scriptures like the Puranas. There's one shloka which I'm fond of. I can say in the second chapter, shloka 20. Many of you have heard that many times. There, Bhagavan Sri Krishna says, the divine presence within us is, it has no birth, it has no death, it does not change, it is imperishable. Even when the body, mind, sense organ entity, this complex, dies, that does not die. Nahanyate hanyamane sharire. Sharire hanyamane. When the body dies, it is destined to this matter, degenerates, changes every moment. Atmana hanyate, the divine presence does not go out of existence. That's our true nature. That is what Sri Ramakrishna is explaining here. I am, the Vedanta says, I am He, Brahman is real and the world is illusory. Even the I is illusory. Only the Supreme Brahman exists unconditionally, always, no beginning, no end, no past, no future, no present, no beginning, no middle, no end. Anadi Madhyanta. That is the reality. Only the Brahman exists, Supreme Brahman exists. But the I cannot be got rid of. This individual feeling that I am a separate individual is not so easy to get rid of. There are ways to deal with that one. The I cannot be got rid of. Therefore, it is good to have the feeling I am the servant of God, His son, His devotee. Elsewhere in the Gospel, Sri Ramakrishna says, this ego cannot be easily gotten rid of. It will be there for a long time. But however, it can be modified, made harmless. The unripe eye, he calls it kacha ame, unripe eye, which says, I am this person, I am great, I have all this knowledge, I have all this money, I am the head, I am the supervisor, I am so powerful. That feeling is the unripe eye, kachami. That is harmful. That can be modified. We can say the item it can still remain, but we can say, I am a child of God, I am a devotee of God, I am a servant of God. All these things that I have in my name, what I call my property, is all His. I am only a temporary caretaker. I am a servant, I am a manager, but is all His. That modification, that's what the ripe eye. I can still remain. Actually, devotees don't want to merge in God. They want to keep their identity separate from God. Jnanis want to merge in God. The I will merge in Brahman, and only Brahman remain. That is the Jnani's position. But the devotees want to keep their identity separate from God. I don't want to become sugar. I want to eat sugar. Sri Ramakrishna used to say. So it's more pleasing for a devotee to remain separate from God and worship God as one's own father, mother, or a friend, or a master, Prabhu in some relationship. That's more pleasing to the devotees. Sri Ramakrishna said to Divine Mother, "Oh Divine Mother, I don't want Brahmajnana. Give it to those who are seeking Brahmajnana." That means I am Brahman. There is no I there anymore. Only Brahman remains. I want to be your little child always. That separation is more enjoyable. Same thing Hanuman said. In the Ramayana story, there is a very nice episode. Hanuman was a great jnani and he had self-knowledge, but he preferred to remain separate as a devotee, as a servant of Sri Rama. When Sri Rama, at the end of the Ramayana story, asked Hanuman, ask me for a boon. Hanuman had played such a key role in the whole story, Ramayana story. What is Ramayana without Hanuman? So Sri Ramakrishna Sri Ramachandra Swami wanted to give him a boon and asked Hanuman, please ask for something, ask for a boon, I'll grant you. Hanuman could have asked for anything. He could have asked for Brahmajnana, self-knowledge, liberation, whatever he asked would have been granted by Sri Rama. But Hanuman says two things, very interesting. First, Hanuman says, I don't want liberation. For most ordinary people, liberation is the highest goal. Salvation, liberation, mukti, moksha is the highest goal for most people. But Hanuman says, I don't want liberation. First of all, he says, if you grant me liberation, he says to Sri Rama, then only Brahman remains pure consciousness. There is no Hanuman, there is no Rama, there is no servant, there is no master. I don't like that one. I want to remain separate from you. Very nice verse is there. Hanuman says, he was a great jnani, great scholar also, Hanuman. He says to Sri Rama, Bhava bandachide tasyai sprahayami namuktaye bhavan prabhu aham dasa iti yatra vilupyate. Famous statement Hanuman says, very fantastic statement Hanuman says. When asked by Sri Rama, please ask for a boon, he says, I don't want mukti. Muktayena sprahayami. I have no desire for mukti. Mukti means what? Bhavabandachide muktaye, that which cuts us under all the bondage of worldly existence. That kind of mukti I don't want. Nasprahaye. Then what does he want? Then he says, I want something, however. He says, very simply, Hanuman says, as long as, O Lord Rama, Sri Ramachandra, my Lord, my Master, as long as your name is taken anywhere in this world, by anybody, in any way, in any language, there I want to be present, simply enjoying listening to the chanting of your names and glories. Just grant me this work. I want to remain as Hanuman. I want to retain this form. Very nice verse here. Hanuman says, Yavat sthasiti te nama loke mama kalevaram tavot tishtutu rajendra varo yamme abhikankshitaha. What a beautiful statement Hanuman makes to Sri Ramachandra. He says, Loke asmin, in this world, yavat te nama sthasiti, as long as your name is taken. Rama's name, Ram Nam Sankirtan is done, Ram Puja is done, wherever it is done, Tavat mama kalevaram tishtatu. Kalevaram means this body, as Hanuman wants to keep retain the individuality as a devotee of servant of Sri Rama. Tavat mama kalevaram tishtatu. May I remain as Hanuman. Varyom ayam marahame abhikangshitam. This is my most cherished boon. Grant me this much. That is what Sri Ramakrishna also said the same thing. So that is Vedanta in few ways. I want to merge with Brahman. There is no I. I don't want to keep this individual I, which is limited. I want to merge in the divine and become one with the divine, Brahman. But devotees want to retain separation. Is more enjoyable, gives them greater joy to remain as a devotee, humble devotee. I am a child of God. I am a servant of God. I am a devotee of God. The Lord is separate from me. It gives greater joy to worship God, to chant His name and glories. Nothing gives greater joy in that one. That is the devotee's position. The Vedanta says, I am He, Brahman is real and the world illusory. Even the I is illusory. Only the Supreme Brahman exists. But the I cannot be got rid of. Therefore, it is good to have the feeling, I am the servant of God, His son, His devotee. I'm a child of God, I'm a devotee of God, I'm a servant of God. These are safe positions to take, which he calls Raipayam, Pakami. For the Kali Yuga, the path of bhakti is especially good. One can realize God through bhakti too. As long as one is conscious of the body, one is also conscious of objects. Form, taste, smell, sound, and touch. These are the objects. It is extremely difficult to get rid of the consciousness of objects. And one cannot realize I am He as long as one is aware of objects. As long as we are aware of the second, Vitiya. If the self alone is there, then there is no duality. Atman alone abides. Nothing else is there to relate to. There is no fear. All fear comes from perceiving the second. There is no fear, there is no desire, because I am complete and perfect in myself. Nothing, there is no gap. Desire means a gap. It's a feeling of imperfection. Desire means I don't have something is missing in my life. And if that missing thing is supplied, my life will become happier and fuller. The state of incompleteness is what we call desire. But if a person has self-knowledge, this perfect Sachidananda himself, there is nothing lacking. So there is no desire. The state of unitary consciousness, where one is free from desire and all other afflictions and fear and everything, that is the goal of the Vedantins. So they say, I don't want anything. I want to become one with the divine. That is Jnani's position. But in the Kali Yuga, the path of bhakti is especially good. As long as one is conscious of the body, one is also conscious of objects, form, taste, smell, sound, and touch. As long as I'm aware that this body is me or a part of me or me, then we are also aware of the objects other than the body. We live in the plane of duality. There are things to be seen, the five sense objects of the five sense organs, shape, distance, form, all these that eyes can see, and fragrance that smell, the nose can feel, smell, and things nice and hard and smooth and rough and heat and cold, skin can feel. and taste, the tongue can feel. All these things are objects of the five sense organs. We perceive them. So as long as these objects are there, which I am experiencing through my five sense organs, then we live in the plane of duality. Then all problems arise. If there is second object, I like it or either dislike it. If there is second object besides me, it's either pleasant or unpleasant. Either I like it or I dislike it. It may cause a problem to me. All these complications will come. That is why the Brahmajnani says, I want to remain in a state of unitary consciousness. There is no second object to be seen, to be perceived, to be thought about. The state of unitary consciousness, where there is nothing else but only pure consciousness, Brahman, is explained nicely in the Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad. A very nice episode in the Chandogya Upanishad, where the great sage Narada was a great Devarshi, not an ordinary sage. He himself became unhappy and grief-stricken at some point. Ordinary people like us, if we experience all those things, it is understandable. But Narada himself. So what does he do? He approaches Sanat Kumara, the greatest of the teachers, Brahma's son. Narada explains his problem. See, I have already studied all the Shastras. He gives a long list of the things, subjects he has studied, from astronomy to zoology, including anatomy and all kinds of mathematics and logic and grammar and sociology, sciences and everything. Long list of things he has studied, mastered. Yet I don't have peace of mind, Narada says. Then Sanat Kumara says, all you know is scripture's text. You have textual knowledge. You can recite all those books backwards and forwards. Then Narada recognizes that. Then how does peace come? If not through scholarship, nobody can have greater scholarship than Narada had. If not through that, how can real peace can come? Lasting, unconditional peace can come. Then he says, Narada himself says, I've heard from great teachers like you that only that person who has knowledge of the self, that person is ever permanently free from all kinds of sorrow and all limitations, all suffering. I've heard like that from great teachers like you. Tarati shokam atmaviditi bhagavad drishyabhya shrutam. From great teachers like you, Narada says to Sanat Kumara, that only that person crosses over all the shock, all sorrow, all grief, all limitations, atmavit, only when he knows the self. Then Sanat Kumara takes him to a series of 10 steps, 19, 20 steps. You're going to skip all of that. Then finally, Sanat Kumara says, only when you reach a state of such a consciousness, only when the self remains, because there is nothing else to be seen, there's nothing else to be heard from, there's nothing else to be thought about. Only you reach that stage, then you will have permanent peace and joy that nothing can disturb. Until then, as long as you stay in the domain of duality, there'll always be some problem. So he tells them how to gain that one. So that is the position of the jnani. But for a bhakta, no, I want to be separate from God. I want to be a servant of God. I want to be a child of God, a devotee of God, serving the Lord. That is more pleasing to a devotee. If that kind of devotion is more suitable in the Kali Yuga. In the gospel elsewhere, many times Sri Ramakrishna says, for the Kali Yuga, the path of bhakti as taught by Narada is the most suitable path. So we go back to here. As long as one is conscious of the body, one is also conscious of objects, form, taste, smell, sound, and touch. These are the objects. It is extremely difficult to get rid of the consciousness of objects. And one cannot realize I am he as long as one is aware of objects. As long as I'm seeing something else, feeling something else, hearing something else, then I cannot say I am he. We live in a plane of duality. Then path of bhakti is most suitable. The sannyasi is very little conscious of worldly objects. but the householder is always engrossed in them. Therefore, it is good for him to feel, I am the servant of God. A neighbor asks the question, next question. All the sins of the body fly away if one chants the name of God and sings his glories. The birds of sin dwell in the tree of the body. Singing the name of God is like clapping your hands. As at a clap of the At a clap of the hands, the birds in the tree fly away, so do our sins disappear at the chanting of God's name and glories. This is what Sri Ramakrishna says. The master says, all sins of the body fly away. No, the question was, neighbor, we are sinners. What will happen to us? The neighbor asked the question, householder, we are sinners. What will happen to us? To which Sri Ramakrishna replies, all the sins of the body fly away if one chants the name of God and sings his glory. Simplest way in the Kali Yuga. See, in the earlier ages, the spiritual practices were all of a different type. In the Bhagavata, it is mentioned that in the first age, Krita Yuga, the major spiritual practice was meditation on the self as described in the Upanishads. I am Brahmasmi, earlier stage. But how many of us can do that for now in the Kali Yuga? So many distractions and problems. The second age, Treta Yuga. The Treta Yuga was Sri Ramachandra was there, Rama incarnation was there. At that time, the major spiritual practice was performing elaborate Vedic rituals. In the forest hermitages, the sages used to perform elaborate Vedic rituals, collecting a lot of different materials, chanting mantras and offering these in the fire, and this ceremony would go on for several days. That is when the Rakshasas, demons, used to come and create havoc and disturb the Vedic sacrifices. They didn't want the sages to complete sacrifice and get powers and liberation. Then Sri Rama and Lakshmana had to go there to take care of the Rakshasas. Those we have studied all of that in the Treta Yuga, Ramayana age. Then the third age, Dwapara Yuga, worship, ritualistic worship became the most common form of spiritual practice. Congregational worship in temples and worship in homes, as described in the Puranas and other scriptures, worship became the common practice, the vogue in spiritual life. Now that also is difficult in the Kali Yuga. People don't have time, don't have energy, so many distractions and problems in Kali Yuga. No, for the Kali Yuga, it has been made very simple. Great teachers like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Ramakrishna, Prahlada, they have said for this age, simply repeating God's name with some degree of love for God is enough. That will take us to the highest goal. In the Kali Yuga, repeating God's name is enough. Simple instruction. Anybody can follow. Does not require any special qualifications. God's name can be chanted in any place, at any time, in any condition. Any name of God is this. All names are names of one God only. It has been made so simple. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is said to have given this instruction. Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Namaiva Kevalam, Kalau Nastyeva Nastyeva, Nastyeva Gatiranyatha. Kalau means in the Kali Yuga, Anyatha Gatir Nasti, there is no other way, there is no other way. What is the simpler way then? Simplest way then? Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Namaiva Kevalam. Hari's name, Hari's name. Chanting God, any name of God, Durga, Rama, Krishna, whatever your favorite name, that will do. Chanting that one will accomplish the same result, purifies the mind and makes us possible to experience divine presence. That's what he says, Sri Ramakrishna says, all the sins of the body fly away if one chants the name of God and sings his glories. The birds of sin dwell in the tree of the body. Singing the name of God is like clapping your hands, as at a clap of the hands, the birds in the tree fly away. So do our sins disappear at the chanting of God's name and glories. It has been made very simple for us in the Kali Yuga. No need for elaborate Vedic rituals and learning Sanskrit and Upanishads, studying Upanishads and Vedanta. Some people can do that one. They are even valid even now. Anybody can do that one. Those who have the ability and interest, they can do that one. But for majority of people, simply chanting God's name is enough to purify their mind, enhance our devotion, make our devotion deeper and purer, and grant us prema bhakti or raga bhakti, pure devotion. If one has pure devotion, then knowledge also will come. Sri Ramakrishna said elsewhere that if you have pure devotion to the Divine Mother, she will grant you some knowledge of the self, Brahmagyan, she will grant you if you need. So that is the advantage in Kali Yuga, Harir Nama, name of God. Again, you find that the water of a reservoir dug in a meadow is evaporated by the heat of the sun. Likewise, the water of the reservoir of sin is dried up by the singing of the name and glories of God. So many hymns and so many names are there, we can chant any name. Well, chanting the name of God can be done in several ways. Many people chant the one name of God repeatedly. It becomes japa. Nama japa or mantra japa. Some people take a mantra initiation from a teacher and repeat the mantra over and over again. Every time you repeat the mantra, the mind becomes pure. It's just like holding the one end of a long chain, the other end tied to the log in the river. So if every time you repeat the name of God once, you're advancing towards the goal by one link, small step you take. So by repeating the name of God constantly, repeatedly, with some degree of devotion, we reach the goal, namely God. That's the simplest way in the Kali Yuga. Likewise, the water of the reservoir of sin is dried up by singing the name and glories of God. You must practice it every day. The other day at the circus, I saw a horse running at top speed with an English woman standing on one foot on its back. How much she must have practiced to acquire that skill. So he says, you must practice it every day. Practice make perfect. So practicing chanting the name of God as much as possible, that is the simplest spiritual practice, most suitable for majority of people in the Kali Yuga. Any name is, all names are names of one God only, with some degree of devotion. The beginning of a devotion is not pure, is combined with some degree of selfishness. There is always seeking from God. We pray to God for something. In the Gita, Sri Krishna says, four kinds of people worship me. Four kinds means with different motivations. Chaturvida bhajante mam jana sukritino arjuna. So Arjuna, four kinds of devotees worship me. Who are they? Artaha, a person in distress. Arti means distress. In the evening Arati, Sarvamangala Mangalya, Sarvas Jarte Hare Devi, you say, oh Divine Mother, you are remover of all the problems of all people. Like Artha means a person who is in some kind of distress. Family problem, job problem, financial problem, health problem, children problem, whatever. Such a person prays to God, requesting freedom, requesting God to remove the problem. Either good or bad, seeking something from God. Sri Krishna says it is okay. It does not say this is bad right away. In the beginning, it is okay for devotees to seek something from God, something that is bothering him, or a artharthi, some person who does not have something which he wants to have. Artha means specifically meaning of artha is money. Artha means any object, anything that a person does not have right now, and that person believes that if that missing thing is supplied, my life will be happier, fuller, and better. So he goes to God seeking that. The thing that he's seeking may be anything. It may be a job. A jobless person seeks job. He needs to be a job to make money to pay bills and have put food on the table. It's the important thing. A person who does not have a child prays for a child. A person who does not have a place to stay prays for a house, like that one. Something is missing that is causing problem. And if that missing thing is supplied by the grace of God, then my life will be happier, fuller, better. With that belief, he prays to God for that missing thing, artharthi. Sri Krishna says it is okay. For whatever reason you pray to God, you are doing the right thing. Udara sarve evaite. Even if you pray for something ordinary, worldly thing like a job, pray to God. That's good thing. You are praying to God. For whatever reason, if you take the name of God and pray to God, you are doing the right thing, he says. However, later he says, of all these people who pray to God with different motivations, one who does not seek anything from God, he is a superior devotee. Jnani tvatmaiva me matam. Udara sarve evaite jnani tvatmaiva me matam, he says. The jnani, or person who has pure devotion, does not seek anything. Even if there's something that is missing that person's life, he does not ask God for that, to supply that missing thing. Even if some pain is bothering that devotee, he does not ask God to remove that pain. Because pure devotion means no seeking, depending totally on the will of God. God knows better than I know what I need. So he will supply what I need at the right time if it is good for me. I leave it to him. I don't want to tie his hands by asking something specific. Why not leave it to him? He knows better what I need. The Lord has promised in many places in the Gita and other books that to a devotee, he will provide what is needed, what is necessary, and protect what is needed. Yogakshemam Mahamyaham, in 9th chapter of the Gita, very famous verse. Ananyas chintayanto mam yejana paryapasate. Those devotees who single-minded devotion pray to me, Tesham Nityavayuktanam, those who have steadfast devotion to me, Yogakshemam Maham Yaham. I do two things, Lord's promise. Yoga means providing something which is missing, which is needed. A person does not have a place to stay or money to buy food missing, the Lord will provide it at the right time, in the right way. He knows better than what I know, what I need. I myself may not know what is good for me. I may seek something wrong, which may appear good but may not be good for me. But he knows better. Why not leave it to him rather than tying his hand? That devotee's position. That is, no seeking there. Kshema means protecting what one has provided. Providing and protecting. That's his promise. So a person who has pure devotion, no seeking at all. Totally depending upon the Lord's will and not seeking. Loving the Lord anyhow. That is the sign of pure devotion. That kind of devotion is what Narada is teaching. That's the kind of devotion that Sri Ramakrishna asks us to cultivate. This is called Raga Bhakti or Prema. So you must pray, you must practice every day. To get that kind of bhakti, daily practice necessary. Not sporadic, proper, not when convenient, not when you remember, but every day, as much as possible, we have to set aside time to pray to God, to repeat his name. And he gives the example of the circus, a performer who was, I saw a horse running at top speed with an English woman standing on one foot on its back. Great skill is needed and a lot of practice every day, hours of practice has to be done to acquire that kind of skill. How much she must have practiced to acquire that skill? Weep at least once to see God. People elsewhere, he said, people shed jug full of tears for worldly things, like family, for job, and husband or wife or child, or for money, but who cries for God? Real devotion means the devotion must well up in a person's heart. Just listening to the name of God once, if it brings tears of joy and devotion, if the voice chokes and hair stands on end, that person has pure devotion. In the very first chapter of the first page of the first chapter of the Gospel, Sri Ramakrishna said, when M went for the first time, he heard Sri Ramakrishna say this one to somebody. When a person hears the name of God, name of Hari once, if his if tears of joy flow from his eyes, and if his hair stands on end, and if his voice shook, they know that that person has pure devotion. These are signs of pure devotion. And that kind of pure devotion comes, that is considered higher than liberation, self-knowledge, or anything. That is pure devotion. That kind of devotion is what Sri Ramakrishna is teaching. Weep at least once to see God. These then are the two means: practice and passionate attachment to God, that is to say, restlessness of the soul to see Him. Practice and passionate attachment to God. Two things are needed: restlessness of the soul to see Him. He calls it Vyakulata. We all have longing for God, desire for God, otherwise we would not be here at all. We all have desire to know God. But our desire has to be made more intense and exclusive. If you ask an ordinary person what would you like to do in life, he has a list of 20 different things. And among them, God realization is also there in the list somewhere. So many other things are there. But pure devotion means checking out all other 19 different things and bringing this desire to know God, making it number one thing in the priority list of priorities, and that's the only thing remains on the list. Exclusive devotion to God, no other concern, no other desire, no other requirement, only God. I want only God, nothing else. And that desire must be intense, Vyakulata. Elsewhere, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he describes the nature of intensity of longing, how intense it must be. We all have longing for God, but it has to be made more intense and exclusive. You can't live without God even for a moment. Less like in the parable, Sri Ramakrishna says, the teacher took the boy's head and put it under the water. When the boy asked him, when I am going to see God, and after 5 seconds, he lifts it up and he asked the student, what did he feel? Oh, sir, I just wanted to breathe. At that moment, when the boy's head was under the water, the only thing that boy wanted to be able to breathe. At that time, if you give him any toy or any food or anything, you push it. I want to be breathe. That kind of longing, intensity to see God must be there. Intense vyakulata must be there. That is what Sri Ramakrishna is explaining. Intense longing must be there. It says restlessness for God, restlessness that the soul to see Him. What kind of restlessness it is nicely described in one stanza in the by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his famous composition Shikshashtakam. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is said to have composed a hymn containing 8 stanzas. Ashtaka means hymn containing 8 stanzas. Shiksha means instruction on how to pray. There, this is one stanza that describes the intensity of longing of a devotee longing to see God. He says, Yugayitam nimeshena chakshusha pravrishayitam shunyoyitam jagat sarvam govinda virahena me. Description of intensity of longing, Vyakulata. He says, nimeshena yugayitam. Nimesha means the time it takes to twinkle the eyes, the twinkling of an eye. For that short duration of time, if I forget God, think about worldly things, then when I remember God again, it looks like ages have passed. Yuga means a long age of hundreds of thousands of years. Yuga itam nimeshena. If you forget God for even for a short period of time, it looks as if for a long time I have not remembered God. That feeling of remorse will come. Chakshusha pravarshaayitam. Pravarsham in monsoon season. From the eyes, copious tears of devotion and remorse flow. How unfortunate of me to have forgotten God for such a long period of time. Only for a few seconds he has forgotten God. And third thing that happens is Shunyaitam Jagat Sarvam. Whole universe becomes empty. Shunya means emptiness, void. Everything is there, house is there, people are there, family, children, money, job, everything is there. But if I don't remember God, if that one thing is missing, then everything becomes meaningless and empty. What makes everything meaningful in our life with God is the one behind these zeros. Zeros. Sri Ramakrishna gives us example. You may have 10 zeros, but all are up to only zero. But if you put one behind the first zero, then it becomes every zero adds value to it 10 times. It's the one that makes the zeros meaningful. In the same way, it is God, devotion to God, that makes our life, human life, meaningful. Otherwise, a man may have a lot of money, fame, and position, and power, and everything. But if there is no devotion to God, all of those things are of no use. They are interesting, enjoyable for the time being, but in the long run, they all go away. Separation will come, old age will come, death will come. Nothing makes sense. Those things don't make sense. For the time being, they are interesting and enjoyable. But what makes life meaningful is devotion to God. And that devotion to God is very easy to practice in the Kali Yuga. Simply chanting the name of God, daily practice of chanting the name of God as much as possible. That is the simplest way in the Kali Yuga to acquire pure devotion to God. Pure devotion is higher than self-knowledge. If one has a devotion, knowledge will come. The Divine Mother will grant self-knowledge also. So that is this passage continues along. These 10 are the two means: practice and passionate attachment to God, that is to say, restlessness of the soul to see Him. Sri Ramakrishna began his midday meal with the devotees. It was about 1 o'clock, and the devotees sang in the courtyard below. Then there's a song, and this continues. Let us stop here. Say the closing prayer. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukampavita Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidhyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha. Om. We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. May there be peace and joy in our hearts. Adhyatmika Shanti. May there be peace and harmony among all beings. Adi Bhautika Shanti. And may there be peace everywhere in nature. Adi Daivika Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sarvam Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Thank you all. And Swamiji will be coming Sunday morning. And this Sunday, Mataji will be speaking at 11 o'clock. All of you, please come.